Hi there, audience. I wanted to share these conversations with other Asian American other Asian Americans. And here, Julie. So I saw that you posted this article that really spoke to me, and it talked about the piece that, well, it's not that bad. You're talking to another Asian American friend, where it's not that bad. I mean, it's not Black Lives Matter, or people are, really being impact. I mean, really like killed, every day. Well, that kind of is every day, what I've been seeing. But tell me about what prompted you to write that.
So, well, first of all, it's just so I started my own business a few months ago, and first it was just, oh, I need to do a marketing email, and I wanted to have an email. I wanted to have a letter from the founder, and I just thought about what with all the anti-Asian hate going on, it's just like, well, this feels like a time to just reflect on that. And so what became just this, it started as just, oh, I'm just going to reflect on this a little bit and talk about my other things. It actually became a full-blown blog post. Um, and um, and so this is a personal matter for me, just because I'm an Asian woman. I was born in Vietnam. I came here when I was 2 months old. My parents and we came as boat people, and I have a team where we are all Asian women. And just seeing what's happening across the country, it matters a lot to me and my team. And we come from, I mean, I'm really proud to say that there's someone from Myanmar, someone from South Korea, someone from China, someone who's another person who's Vietnamese American who grew up here, was born here. And a lot of people don't see and really understand the diversity of the Asian experience. So, I mean, what first prompted it was just, okay, I feel that this is a pretty unique in terms of having a consulting practice that focuses essentially on leadership that is led by Asian women, and I really should say something. And writing has always just helped me process my thoughts. And so for the week before, I was seeing all of these messages pop up, and I was just like, I don't know. It was pretty overwhelming, and I was
Okay, hold
getting,
on. So
yeah.
back up. All
Mhm.
these messages, who are they from and what are they saying?
Yeah. So, so there are messages from my friends who are saying, thinking about you. And there are also messages that I'm seeing on Facebook from other um, Asian leaders just decrying the violence. And I was just processing, processing. And all I could really do was just like, and just comment, like maybe a comment here or there, but I was just processing.
Well,
Um,
we'll pause for a second.
mhm.
So the people who were checking in on you, um, white, black, Asian, all across the board. What?
All across the board, all across the board. So the first friend who messaged me was is a African American man who grew up in the American South. And we met maybe 4 years ago, and he's not here in Seattle anymore. He sent me a really lovely long text message, just checking in on me, and um, and that surprised me. It's like, oh, and because actually I do remember the week before thinking, as this is and this is before the Atlanta shootings.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I wonder what this means for solidarity. I wonder, I mean, are people, as there's more reporting that's being done about anti-Asian hate crimes, are people going to, how is uh, just, is anyone going to be um, checking in on me, essentially, or checking in on the from those, is this just from within the Asian community um, talking about it, or is this going to be is there going to be solidarity outside of the Asian community as well? And I say this because I live in the international district in Seattle, and
And
when
those who are outside, that's our Chinatown.
mhm. And so during all of the Black Lives Matters BLM stuff in the summer, all of these restaurants and businesses had these murals, beautiful murals that were painted and talking about Asians in solidarity with BLM. And so it's just like, huh, I wonder how is this going to be reciprocated? And I've actually been surprised by yes. And I've also been surprised at myself by how moved I've been by it.
Yes. Okay. Pause. Yes and yes. And when I was in Chinatown the other day, I was looking at all the murals, and I was thinking, I think about 20% of the artwork is Black Lives Matter. And there is a group I went to, Asians for Black Lives Matter. That group is pretty active. A lot of millennials. I'm like the old lady who was there. And then the first person to call me was my Black friend from the South, also.
Mhm. Yeah. And so it's just been, people have been checking in, and as I was actually drafting that letter, I mean, Jolene, you mentioned the conversation I had
Yeah.
with my friend, right? And literally that morning I did my first draft, and then I met with my friend for a social distance walk, and she's an Asian American woman, and I said, how are you feeling about this? And she said, well, I know it's bad, I just don't think, and people have been checking in on me, but I just don't think it's as bad as what's been happening to Black people. And so and that stuck with me, and I added that part to my letter, to my post. And it was like, and I remember talking through it, and by the end of the conversation I said, the thing is, we are being given the mic right now, and the reality is there's just limited mind share in America. There's only so many things that we can think about any given time, and if we're given the mic and then we just say, oh, I mean, my problems aren't as bad, isn't that just reinforcing
Yeah.
this idea that we just don't need as much, and that we can just take the blows, and that so yeah, that's that uh, that conversation, which happened the day before I put out the letter, was just really kind of really helped me clarify just this guilt that I and a lot of other uh, Asian friends who I've been talking to feel, and yet
And
as
explain guilt to people who are not tracking with you.
yeah, so guilt, I mean, so that there's there's this idea of a model minority, and that Asians are the model minority, and the reality is that, like in King County, I think Asians make their median income is the highest median income above white people, right? So it's like, oh, Asians are high performers or high achievers, and they don't complain, and they're law abiding, and all of these things. And going back to the guilt, there's this guilt in our as a community that's also facing racism. How is it that overall, I mean, this is certainly not true for all Asian groups, and there's a lot of differences within the API community. How is it that we are, just like with the stat I just mentioned, right, like economically doing better, and there's guilt around that? I actually just read David Chang's Eat a Peach memoir. So David Chang, he's the one who founded Momofuku and really kind of introduced a lot of kind of Asian fusion food.
Okay.
In any case, he brings up survivor's guilt. And
What's that?
and survivor's guilt is when you've gone through some trauma together, and then the guilt
Oh,
that someone feels in, like, they survived. And that really stuck out for me. And because he was using it more in the context of, like, he's doing well in the food industry, restaurant industry, and a lot of people haven't.
mm,
And I read his book. There are very few memoirs written by Asian Americans put out by major publishers.
mm-hmm.
And I just thought about, like, how that could actually be applied to just even I mean, I don't, want to be really careful about speaking for all Asians, right? But just that.
But the thing is, like, you are only speaking for you, and you happen to speak. A lot of people are going to be to be with you anyways, but also the people who are like, I think differently. Well, let's hear your voice. Step up.
Yeah. So going to that survivor's guilt of just, like, in this world with so much racism, it's just, oh, are are Asians actually faring better? And what does that mean? And then just guilt around that, like it's, oh, we don't have it as bad.
Yeah,
And
right.
so yeah.
I think I've been reading the Asian American group, and there's 12,800 people in there. I've been reading it religiously. It is such a gold mine of so many different perspectives. I think the guys aren't so much with talking about their feelings. I think maybe obviously, no matter what race you are, but particularly the men. So I'm working on that. But the idea of the guilt where it's not as bad. However, I'm also reading and seeing all these things. And yeah, I mean, we don't need to compare, but there are very bad things happening. And like, I don't even know if people knew of the shooting of the 28-year-old in California the other day. I don't know if that shooting that she died made the news. And there's all these incidents that I'm reading about that are they're not in the mainstream news, but actually I don't even know if they're reported because Asians have shame around I don't want to burden anybody, and hey, I should have had protection around me. Or I think there's that whole thing of like, I don't want to complain. We just, it's not in the culture. We just tough it out. We've always been tough. We've always been discriminated against, and we live through it. That's what I hear mostly.
Yeah, and that's the conversation. I mean, when I was talking to my dad about this too, and because it's just, hey, we need to report this in our newspaper, and he was just, well, we need to make sure, is it really, was it stemming from racism, or is it something else? Was it just a robbery, or was it just a crime, or what was happening there? And before we say it was racism, we just need to make sure, because once you go there, then that's your and so there's, I think, a I don't know if we could say that there's just like even doubt of like, is this what is this racism, or is it something, or is it just an accident? um I mean, I'm also fascinated by, I mean, part of me writing that essay was just, can we just have a space to say, I'm in pain right now? And it doesn't have to be part of this larger conversation around systemic racism or around white supremacy. It could just be, hey, I'm scared to go outside.
Yeah.
And I mean, I tried to, a few weeks ago, I was helping a group do some race-based caucusing, and it was the non-Black POC group, and brought up the topic of anti-Asian hate. And what really surprised me was, people then just started talking about, well, what does this mean in a uh, larger perspective of systemic racism? And I was just trying to create a space for, hey, I'm scared. And it was interesting how I just felt like people weren't kind of getting in touch with their feelings, I guess, like, just and that they want to talk about more abstract issues.
Huh. I have a victory story.
Mm.
May I share that with you?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So last week when I thought I was going to pop onto the Asian American podcasters uh, um, Zoom event, it was like white person, white person, white. I'm like, wait a second, which event am I at? And it was the new podcasters group. So it wasn't the Asian American one I was popping onto. And this week I messaged them. It's maybe 12 people or so. And I messaged them and I said, hey, would it be possible that I could have 1 minute to talk about Asian hate and to also volunteer to be the Asian resource? Like, because people are scared to talk to Asians, like, oh, I don't know what to say. I don't want to offend anybody. And so I'm like, I would like to be that person. You can ask me anything. Anything is on the table. And they said yes and gave me a couple minutes to do that. And it kind of makes me, I was kind of teary. I'm like, oh my gosh. And they validated me. They listened to me. Two people are going to interview me on their podcasts. And this is what we want to see because we are so invisible. In general. And so this is a very small group, and I was just so pleased, like, oh my gosh, you just listened to me. And it was just like, so, like, it gives me hope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just I think that the act of just listening. I mean, I remember I was talking to a Latina friend last week, and she was like, yeah, I wasn't sure if I should check in. I saw this like, check in with your Asian friends. Don't check in with your Asian friends. And it kind of reminded me of what was happening with BLM over the summer. Like, check in with your Black friends. Don't check in with your Black friends. And it's like, what's the right thing to do? That's kind of constantly like, what should I be doing? I don't want to say anything that's triggering, but I want to be there. And I think that it's there's no universal response, right? Because some people could say, like, why are you checking in on me? You're being performative or something. And another person could say, thank you so much. So,
Well, how about you? Now you're in a leadership position and you are, I mean, you're media essentially, and you're also in so many Asian communities and DEI and all the diverse communities. So I would say you're a leader, so you're going to be more people are going to come to you, so that can be a little bit more tiring. But what do you want your friends to do?
I mean, I actually really appreciate it when people check in. And I think, I mean, beyond just this issue of anti-Asian hate, I mean, we're in a pandemic.
Hmm.
It's really nice just to have people call. I mean, Jolene, when you called me a few weeks ago to share your excitement about the Asian podcasters, it's like, oh, that's awesome, right? Like, I loved hearing your voicemail and hearing your excitement.
Yeah.
And I think that just aside from checking in about anti-Asian hate, I think it's just nice to say, hey, I'm here, I'm thinking about you. So uh, maybe this year will also create more of a practice of just of checking in on one another. So
Yeah. Yeah. How for your friends, what do you want them to do in support of you and this movement?
I mean, I think just it's as easy as just, hey, I'm thinking about you. I mean, it really, for some people, I appreciate it when people share the essay because it meant something to them. And so there's that too. And I think just having conversations, some, it's, I think sometimes when Asians talk about things that happen to them, especially I've seen this in the workplace, it can get dismissed. It's like, oh, and then that perpetuates this feeling of like, well, my problem isn't as bad.
Yeah, and maybe I shouldn't say anything because it probably won't. And if I speak up, if I say something and it's dismissed, then I'd look like I'm a complainer or.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I was talking to an Asian American friend who was telling me that when he brought up and who's Japanese, when he brought up things like the internment camps, people were just, oh well, that was a long time ago. That can't happen now. And it was just like, wow. And and I had to point out to him, I think that it's being dismissed because Asians are seen as this model minority who don't have problems. And I mean, I've even heard from people like, are Asians people of color? And and so it's yes, we are. So
Yeah, I made a video the other day just saying my Asian American experience, Japanese,
mm,
Chinese, Swedish, fourth
mm,
generation Yonsei, and just kind of going through and how I relate, identify with my Japanese side. I don't have Chinese relatives or Swedish. I mean, just kind of like this is how I float through the world, because people don't know and they don't know how to ask and they're scared to ask. What I want people to know is like, please don't be afraid because your silence is deafening and it's hurtful and it's painful. Um, and it's like, I know I may give more grace than the next person, but like if you say something and it's the wrong thing, I really appreciate you saying something. Here's some maybe different language that is probably better language to use. But it's like when people don't try because they're like, oh, I don't want to say anything with the Me Too movement. Okay, well, you're
mm,
just like, you're the problem. I mean, I with the Me Too movement, I had to call 10 of my guy friends and just have a one-on-one meetup, whatever, a few years ago. Like, what is your problem? Why aren't you saying anything? Because I'm
mhm,
like, because I'd share these different things about different stories and everything, and it's like nothing, silence. And I'm like, what is your problem? Because it looks like you are unsupportive. And so they're just freaked out to say anything. I'm like, you know what? Get some courage. So
Well, and I think that there are lots of different ways of taking the mic and also showing support. And I think it can be very one-on-one and personal. I don't
yeah,
think it has to be. I mean, even this. I mean, I didn't think I'd be having this conversation on Facebook. And so it's. I think, like for me, I use writing as my platform. Other people, they use other platforms, and I think it's also just it's great if you can just have a conversation with one friend too. I don't think it has to
yeah,
be public, right? I think it's more of just I have the right to have this conversation. Like my voice matters. And then for those who are wanting to support the API community right now, just checking in, like how are you doing? I don't like for me personally,
yeah.
I don't tend to put things on. I don't do the avatar changing and things like that. Like they're just different. I don't go to rallies. I do
hmm
not. I do not go to marches and rallies. Right? I think that
I do not either.
yeah. So and there's just lots, and there are people who do and who like that, and that's great, right? And I just think that there are
Yeah.
lots of different ways to show from to show that we have a voice, and also to show that that to show your support.
Yeah. And you do the writing. My writing, not so much. I'm trying to proofread at least so I have less typos and try and like read it back so I don't, but I'm such in a hurry. And my medium is more visual.
Yeah.
So I'm
Mm-hmm.
glad you are there. What are you, is there something that you would want people to do in support of this movement? For example, I want people to share. For me, if they're supporting me, they are sharing and they're listening. I'm glad that people say they're with me. I appreciate that, but show me that you're doing something. So for me, I
Mm-hmm.
want them to listen and learn and share because even in my community, for example, last night, a person you and I in the media know was just like, "Hey, these two white guys in a pickup yelled at him, racial slurs, and this is right in my neighborhood." And I'm like, oh. And when I was at the Ranch 99 at that TNT. That was my first outing in a year to a restaurant. It was my uncle's death day, and I was sitting in the back, so I had the view of the windows, and I was like, oh wow, this is perfect if somebody wanted to just gun down a bunch of old Chinese people. And I just was like, okay, if that happens, I'm gonna, my parents and my aunt, my mom's kind of hard of hearing, so I'm like, but we'll get on the ground and I'll call 911 and I'll have them crawl to the bathroom. So this is, and Julie, you know me, like I'm kind of confident and I'm not too fearful, but I don't have weapons. And
Mm-hmm.
and I was thinking about that. And I'm in the suburbs, and
Mm-hmm.
and on my next door neighborhood, like the guy was like, "What's racist? There's no. What are you talking about?" The guy, you know, he just whatever. He didn't say he had a bad day, but it's like he doesn't know about all the other things going, and it is not. I would say even in my circles, who are total do-gooders, super nice people, but they don't know what's happening. I mean, I didn't plug in until I didn't just plug in. I just plugged in a few days ago, and so I I'm not going to say it's not their fault, but it's not. I mean, it's like we. I want to help everybody know about this in a big way because right now, as you said, the spotlight is right now. Like
Mm-hmm.
something happens next week, and then where to go? People forgot about the Asians, and it's still happening.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just wondering what you think needs to happen to
I mean,
help
I think it just still comes back to uh, sometimes it's not doing things like don't invalidate someone, right? So what
Mm,
you were just saying, just or say try to soothe it away. I think just sometimes listening and oh, okay, I didn't know that was happening, and I want to learn more. I think it can be as simple and as powerful as that. I don't think it needs to be. I mean, for those who want to demonstrate in more public ways, that's
mhm.
fine. It's just
Yeah,
I think that don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And
yeah,
also, I mean, in a time when there's so much performance, it's just I think it's really important to make sure people know that a phone call, a text message is great too. It doesn't have to be this big thing.
So what I'm hearing is like, care.
Yeah, exactly. Just care for others.
Just care.
Yeah.
Don't worry
Yeah.
about whatever. Just care. You're a
Yeah.
friend. Care.
Yeah. And I also got messages from other Asian friends too. So it's not just non-Asians reaching out to Asians. I mean, I think we can do it within our own community as well. So
And Julie, just to let you know, I was reading the thread of, is it just me, or is anybody, are your white friends and other friends just not reaching out to you? And there was a huge, like, all these people are, yeah, I chose the wrong friends. My friends don't care. And like, not like, it's so sad.
well, and
It,
I wonder how much of that is fear of saying
yeah.
the wrong thing,
Oh,
right?
totally.
Because I mean, we
Totally. Yep.
also, it's even the example I like to use is the question of asking to Asians, like, where are you from, right? And so some Asians will go like, I can't believe you asked me that. I'm clearly from here. I'm so offended that you asked me
Right.
that. And others are like, this is where I'm from.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of that former response can
Yeah.
get people to go, I mean, because I've talked to non-Asian friends, and particularly white friends, who are like, I know not to ask that. And that kind
Yeah.
of, to me, is sad. Like, that's
Yeah.
the lesson.
Yeah, well, so I have this program called Aren't Asians All Alike, and
Mm-hmm.
I had like 6 or 7 different focus groups, and I mean most of the people were Chinese and tech, and maybe Japanese, a few mixed people, because that's my reach,
Mm-hmm.
and that's one of the first questions I asked to just get a feel on it, and it really is, what is your intention? Are you asking me so you can categorize me, or you're asking me because you're curious? And so I think I have a lot to say about that, because it's how you care, but also that shouldn't be the first thing out of your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I think you're right. I mean, we didn't just pick crappy friends. It's just they're so scared. They're so
Yeah.
scared. I'm so PC that I'm gonna do nothing, and that
Yeah.
is, for me, that is absolute. Tell me that I am worth taking the risk. That's am I animated right now? Yeah. Okay. So anyways, I'm out there to say, hey, people, take the risk. And if you misstep, you know, profusely apologize and say, I'm sorry, I wanted to be there for you and I wanted to take the risk. I wasn't sure what to do, but I wanted to be there for you. What should I do? How, whatever it is. So, yeah. Well, Julie, thank you so much for having this candid conversation and for me calling kind of out of the blue and doing your first Facebook Live. I want to encourage more people to do this, and I'll be looking for other Asian Americans who can talk out loud, because we just need to hear more voices. So if you have people you want to refer me to, that'd be fantastic. Thank you so much.
When was the last time you felt like this? Has it been a minute? It is time to mix it up. Climb out on those limbs and jump into life. Life is full of excitement. We just need to get curious, get uncomfortable, and go for it.